Welcome back to the second hour of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Now, it is the 9/11 anniversary, and we got an object lesson today that the heart of the matter regarding 9/11 is when the drills go live. There are these drills. They go on all the time. They're constantly drilling all kinds of terrorist attacks, terrorist events, military defense, air defense against terrorist attacks, and so forth. What we had down on the Potomac River by the Pentagon this morning was what looks like a stunt from our dear friends in the Rogue Network, reminding us that they're still there. Nobody has laid a glove on them. The September criminals are still in power, and that network, which was probably founded in its current form back under Grover Cleveland in 1895 when the U.S. government capitulated to J.P. Morgan and London in the midst of a dollar crisis, and that rogue network has been with us ever since, and it stretches across all the false flags of the 20th century and 9/11 up to the present day. The Rogue Network, I would think, possibly inside the FBI more than elsewhere, decided to have a stunt, and it was that Obama was scheduled to go to the Pentagon for a commemorative ceremony with Admiral Mullen, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and all that, and at the same time the Coast Guard was doing what they do 4 or 5 days a week here. You see them on the Potomac quite a lot when you cross the Key Bridge or various other bridges. They were training. They were pretending to capture boats, people resisting, and they were simulating firing some shots. No shots were fired, but they talked about shooting over the radio, bang, 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 and so forth. And this was picked up by CNN. Now, I don't know if CNN sits around the whole time listening to the Coast Guard radio. The FBI might. So I would think there's probably a missing link here between the Coast Guard radio transmissions and CNN getting their mitts on these things and hearing them. I would suspect the FBI, which then turned out to be the lead agency coming in with various kinds of assets into the area. So the long and the short of it is that CNN hears 10 shots have been fired on the Potomac near the Pentagon, and they go live with that, right? They put it right on the air, and a worldwide hysteria develops for a period of, I guess, the best part of an hour until around noon. We finally have the Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard, Vice Admiral John Currier, Coast Guard Deputy Chief of Staff, appears at Coast Guard headquarters saying this was a training exercise. This is what we do all day long, 4 or 5 days a week, low profile. There's no notification because this is just what they do the whole time, and indeed you see them there the whole time. However, this did lead to a 22-minute ground stop of takeoffs from Reagan National Airport, which is just a little bit further down the river, and then a big mobilization by the FBI. Now, it just reminds those of us who know what happened, how it happened, and that is to say 9/11 is a matter of drills going live. Now, here you have a drill which is basically used as a propaganda tool by FBI, CNN, whoever did it, to increase hysteria. But remember that the essence of 9/11, and we'll just mention a few of these if we have time, is a matter of 25-plus drills. 25 drills, either scheduled and ongoing on the morning of 9/11 or recently completed in the last 3 to 4 months, or in advanced stages of preparation for the next maybe 10 to 12 months. That's what 9/11 is. It is those drills being flipped live, being taken live, going live, and reaching the maximum of realism, which they always strive for. It goes from being a very realistic drill to being the real thing where people actually die. And, of course, some of the patsies that are involved are actors who think that they're going to be playing their role as essentially walk-on parts, actors in a drill, and then they're going to go home that night because that's what they've done before, except this time the drill went live and they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. So that is the 9/11 hype of this morning. The other thing is you got to compare this to this low-flying Air Force One over the Hudson River a couple of months ago. There have now been a couple of events that tend to revive and refresh the 9/11 memories. We've also got this character, Assad, the FBI entrapment specialist, who was put on ABC News in particular last night. So Assad says that he is the guy who entrapped the poor, mentally retarded 7 Haitians in the Miami warehouse. He talked to them in glowing terms about bin Laden, made them pledge allegiance to Obama, gave them to Osama. He gave them money, thousands of dollars of money was distributed. And then a significant number, I think 3 or 4 of these poor, mentally retarded Haitian men, none of them Muslim, as far as I can see, were then convicted right after 2 or 3 attempts to complete the frame-up. The FBI finally wrapped that up, and he also says that he came into contact with Mohammed Atta, right, the alleged pilot of the first plane hitting the North Tower. Of course, he couldn't have been the pilot because he didn't know how to do that. But the story from Assad, the FBI provocateur and entrapment specialist, was that he came into contact with Atta, and he asked, couldn't I please go after this guy? And they said, no, leave him alone. Yes, of course, because they needed Atta. Atta had a greater destiny. His destiny was that you couldn't put Atta in jail for September 11th, because then you couldn't manufacture the fantastic story that he had flown this plane. That would have been the one way that he couldn't have been flying the plane, is if he'd been sitting in a jail cell 1,000 miles away. So all of this stuff going on. Now, thanks to Charlie Sheen, the voice of the Truth Movement is heard. We also congratulate the people at the CAN group in New York City. They seem to have gotten a second wind, second lease on life in their attempt to put a 9/11 investigation on the New York City ballot, although there are still lots and lots of hyper-technical hurdles ahead of them in that famous hyper-technical New York state election environment, where all kinds of propositions and referenda are routinely thrown off the ballot because of the tiniest little pecoraro formalisms, as they were called back in 1986. So this is going on. But now, what should happen here? Let us look back. The division between the anti-war movement and the 9/11 Truth Movement was always a very artificial division, which was imposed by the foundation-funded, corrupt, left-liberal leaders of the peace movement and the anti-war movement. They were hysterical that they wanted 9/11 avoided. They didn't want to say a word about 9/11. Because, of course, they'd been told by their foundation controllers, if you entertain 9/11, you will lose your funding. And that has been, we've actually heard that from various of these peace fakers going on. So you had all kinds of so-called peace activists who wanted to protest against the Bush-Cheney wars, but they were not willing to attack the reason given, the premise given, the justification given by the Bush-Cheney regime for these wars. And indeed, 9/11 was, of course, the basis for the entire Bush-Cheney regime for the entire first term and well into the second term, maybe up until about 2006, when the Alex Jones Los Angeles conference being broadcast on C-SPAN tended to temporarily break the back of the hysteria that Bush and Cheney had created. You'll remember that Karl Rove had proposed to run the 2006 elections in the same way that he'd done 2002 and 2004, that is, on the basis of 9/11 hysteria, that the Republicans were the party of 9/11 awareness. So all of that has now happened. But again, let's use the next segment to talk about what's the organizing perspective now. How do you revive anti-war and 9/11 together at the same time?